Hi, welcome to Watch It Play Table Talkback. My name is Rodney Smith. In this video, I want to take a look at your responses to our question, how do you take a gaming group and then break it into smaller groups so that people can play the games they want to play with the people they want to play with and yet still create an inclusive feeling for everyone at the gaming group? Well, it turns out several of you wrote in with your own expressions of those challenges that you've experienced. Let's take a look at some of them now, starting with David Brown. He writes, "It happens in my game group mainly due to staggered arrival times. If we're setting up a 4-player game and a new person arrives, they have to move on because we've got things all set up and it only plays 4. Fortunately, we have a reasonably large group, so there's always something to play, but it's never nice to have to say, sorry, no room at the table." And David, I want to talk about this a little further because sometimes I actually approve of saying, sorry, there's no room at this table, even when there is technically room at the table. Maybe the game could accommodate 5. But I've been in situations where maybe I know the game best. I'm teaching the game, or I've played it before, and I've got several new people at the table, and I know that if we add that 5th person in, not only is it one other person that potentially I have to manage questions for and help clarify things to, but also I know, listen, even when people know the game well, adding a 5th player is going to add another 45 minutes to this game. And adding a 5th player who doesn't know how to play the game along with a bunch of other people who don't know how to play the game, suddenly we're looking at maybe an hour, hour and a half more. And so I don't want to, at the risk of excluding people, include people and then create a negative, suboptimal experience for everyone at the table. And it can be tough to be that person who's quote unquote in the know, or at least thinks they're in the know about what is best for the whole table, because someone else at the table might be saying, sure, there's room here, come on in and sit down and join us. And they don't realize what they're doing potentially to the person who's running the game or to the other people who are at the table who maybe sat down to play that game because, okay, 4 people, I know how long this is going to take, I'm comfortable with that. Oh, we're adding a 5th? Now I don't know if I want to play this anymore. And I don't know if there is really a good etiquette or how you express that, except that maybe I know if I'm sitting at a table with someone else who's teaching the game, I tend to try to defer to them. If I get the sense that they're like a little hesitating to add someone, then I won't volunteer to bring someone into that group myself, because I know that sometimes a new player can change the dynamics of the table. Something else to consider, of course, is whether or not you're talking about a party game versus maybe a deep strategy game, because when it comes to a light filler game, then sure, everyone come on in and let's play together. I think it's more of a challenge around some of those heavier strategy games where this can become an issue. Geneminas Eusvicius wrote, "In our gaming group, when 7 to 10 people come, we always play a game in which everyone can fit. For example, Resistance or Bang the Dice game. And that does a few things. Firstly, it makes everyone feel like a part of the group. And secondly, it prevents that awkward moment of taking place, of trying to figure out how you're going to break up. And when we're finished the game, we discuss what we'll play next." Well, the one thing is, of course, that then after you play the big group game, you're sort of back at the initial problem again. Okay, how are we going to split up? But I did want to mention this comment because I think this is a nice way of creating inclusion either at the beginning of your game night or even at the end. I think sometimes people just knowing, okay, we're going to play a group game, frees them up to feel like, okay, it's okay if I go and isolate myself over here and play a 2-player game or a smaller 4-player heavy strategy game, because later in the night, I'm going to join the rest of the group, we're going to do something together.
Hey Rodney, this is John from ChalkboardGameReviews.com, and I really like the topic about splitting up the group. It's something that our group has had to try to learn as we grow. Our group isn't huge and we don't meet at any specific place. We meet at each other's houses because we're all really close friends. When we split the group to play games, we have a lot of non-gamers and we have a lot of hardcore gamers. And so what happens is 5 hardcore gamers go to play a group. One of the hardcore gamers will play, say, a party game like Snake Oil or something like that with the people who really aren't into gaming as much. And then the timing happens where the hardcore players are still playing their game and the guy who played Snake Oil is just left with nothing else to do and leaves the group early. And so what we're trying to learn as we grow as a group is how many players should play a game. Maybe 3 players should play the real heavy game, and that way, and then 2 of those players should play a 2-player game, so then when the Snake Oil guy is done, he gets to play a game with the 2 people who have been playing, and then you have 2 3-player games going, and everyone gets more playtime. Again, I think it's something that you have to learn as a group as time goes on.
Rambled Fa wrote, "The gaming group I've been going to seems to have an easy time with this. If more people show up than can play one game, we just naturally split into groups. I think it helps that everyone seems pretty willing to try anything, so we never have people fighting over what games to play. I should mention, my group meets up at a few local comic stores rather than anyone's house, so it's more casual in that sense." Rambled Fa, I don't want to take away anything from your earlier points, saying that you have a group of people who are willing to try anything, they're flexible in that way, because I think that is certainly a key ingredient to being able to move around and break into groups at game night and have it go smoothly. But I think a big piece of this is that you're meeting at a comic book store. I'm not sure if I can adequately explain why I feel that way, but I think when you go to a community location that's not someone's home, it feels a little more casual, as you said, a little more fluid, a little more open. People are going to be coming and going. Like if I was going to a comic book store to play games, I'd probably come in, I'd see who was there, I'd say hello, maybe chit-chat a little bit with the owner, maybe look at a couple comic books, sit down, play a game, take a break, get a snack. It just feels like, to me, that would be a different experience than when I'm going to my maybe weekly or bi-weekly game night where someone is sort of opening their doors for 3 to 4 hours, and that's the period of time I have in which to see everybody, get the gaming in, and then split. I also wonder if people run into more challenges this way or put more expectations on their game night when they have less gaming time overall. I'm married, I have a couple kids, full-time work, so when I go to play games, that's like very precious time to me. Whereas when I was younger, playing games, hanging out with friends, I had a lot more free time when I was single. So I could be much more casual about everything that I was doing really in general. And I wonder if that plays a certain role in my perspective on how I approach game nights and gaming groups. Patrick Mertens writes, "It's difficult with 5 to 6 players when you definitely want to play that 4-player game. We find usually the solution is that some people volunteer to play together as a team. This happens mostly when it's a new game for them, so they can learn it easier." Now, I have to say, Patrick, maybe it'd take me back 3 or 4 months and I would have said, oh, man, I don't like the idea of 2 people sort of sharing 1-player slot. Like, I wouldn't want to be part of a partner that way. I'd feel like, oh, I got to consult with somebody else every time I'm trying to make a decision for myself. Is this going to slow down the game? But you know what? I had a couple situations like this happen where we were playing a game. There was one more person that could really fit at the table. I wanted them to experience the game, so I said, listen, I'm going to partner with you. Is that all right? I basically let them take the main lead, but I'd be there to kind of consult, share my thoughts and ideas. And you know what? It was actually a lot of fun because it's nice to have sometimes someone else to bounce your ideas off of and say, what do you think? You kind of feel like you're scheming together, and that kind of dialogue, rather than just being an internal dialogue that you're having with yourself, can be a lot of fun. So then when you have a great success, you have someone to sort of share that with, and when you have a terrible failure, you have someone to share that with as well. So I have to say, don't dismiss this notion as something that may be an option when you have just that one more player that really can fit at the table. As long as the banter between the 2 players isn't going to slow the game down, you should not technically be adding to the gameplay length because it's still the same number of technical players at the table, even though there's more people at the table. Makarachi writes, "We schedule games up to a week beforehand. People can then suggest and sign up for the ones they want to play. And by game night, most people know what they're going to be playing." Makarachi, this is a great tip. Several people wrote this in as a suggestion, and when I think about it, I don't know why I don't take more advantage of that option. I have a Facebook page for my game group, and oftentimes I have at least 1, if not 2 games I'd like to try to get to the table when I go to my game night, so why not just tell people in advance? And then also, I can kind of get a sense of, is anyone responding and saying they're interested? Because if no one is, then it allows me to set my expectations of, okay, maybe this game is not going to be a good fit, and I shouldn't sort of get my hopes set on this one getting to the table this time around.
The game group that I attend, Le Cavajou, have this wonderful blog which you can go and visit because I write some stuff on there from time to time. So just to put in perspective, at the Cavajou there is roughly, some nights you'll have about 5 or 6 people and some nights you'll have 30 people. And basically what they have is they have 1 or 2 people on hand as hosts. These hosts will greet people when they come in. They will try and get a flavour of what kind of games people want to play. They also have a good knowledge of all the games that are there, and they also have a good knowledge of what game's about to finish. because if a couple come in, it's a bit hard if there's other games going on. These hosts will then get the group together, suggest a game, and then teach them the rules, and then be on hand to jump from one table to another. Now they won't do this all the night because it would be a bit unfair on, you know, you've organised a gaming night and you're not really playing because you're organising. But they do swap over halfway through the night, so from 8 till 10, a couple of people do the meeting and greeting, hosting, and then they swap over so other people can play. And sometimes I've even done this, and I suggest that you take it up. I take it up whenever I have friends over or when I have gaming groups. I can get organised and I can cut to the chase, and I know that that game handles well with 4 people, not 7. This game is probably more catered to them. So it works for me, even though it means when I'm at home, I'm the host, and therefore I'm not doing a lot of playing, but it doesn't matter because I'm watching my friends have a good time, and that means more to me than me having a handful of cards and playing along with them. Now, if you excuse me, I need to get back to this game, which I'm playing solo, and I need to go that side of the table and play the other hand. So, till next time.
Ian O'Toole writes, luckily, many of my absolute favorite games play really well with 2, and I also prefer to teach them with only 2 players. So if I see that the group is becoming awkward about splitting, I'll often offer to teach a 2-player game to someone so that the rest of the group can continue with less players. Ian, this is a great suggestion. If you have a 2-player game you really enjoy playing, why not try to share that with somebody else? So then you're having a great experience. Hopefully they are too. And then the rest of the group is also able to have a more optimal experience because they aren't trying to just fit everyone around the table for the sake of including everyone. On the flip side, Johnny Lynn wrote, this is where having a few great 6 to 7 player games comes in really handy. And you're right. Maybe you're just having trouble splitting up the group. Maybe it's just not going to happen. Well, nice to have on hand a couple of games that you do know will play well with that larger group. Maybe it's games that allow for simultaneous play, you know, not a whole lot of analysis paralysis, or whatever works for your group. Maybe in your group, those long, lengthy games are exactly what you're looking for, so that's not even a problem for you. So definitely a good tip. Maybe you need a couple small games, a couple of big player count games, just to allow you to break down into whatever configurations are needed to make it work for your group. J Ward 1465 says, the problem I'm encountering is that we have mixed ages, and it seems like the groups always split along those lines. Older group, younger group. That just bothers me for some reason, but most of the others seem to have accepted that this is the way it's going to be. Yeah, that's an interesting situation because there's nothing inherently wrong with the older players wanting to play with the older players and the younger players want to play with the younger players. But it feels like maybe a missed opportunity, especially if people are doing this out of habit. I mean, one of the things that our hobby has to offer the rest of the world is that we bring people together. It's a personal experience, unlike maybe something like video gaming where you're not seeing the other people you're playing against. You may not even care to ever see them or want to be around them. But with board gaming, we're saying, hey, no, we want to be together in a group. So it does seem a little at odds with the spirit of that to be segregating yourselves along lines that don't necessarily have any particular purpose or reasoning. Obviously, we don't want to play with everybody. There's certain people we will not want to play with. But if it's kind of arbitrary or habit, then maybe that's worth breaking or exploring outside of. So maybe that's where having a group game that the gaming group knows, okay, for half an hour, we're going to play all together this one game. It gives people an opportunity maybe to discover, hey, there's someone else in this gaming group I'd like to get to know a little better and play more games with. So maybe that's a way of, I don't know, like kind of testing those waters and seeing if you can kind of get the groups to mix up a little bit more.
Hey Rodney, this is Marty Connell from Rolling Dice and Taking Names. I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of friends that game in my area. And as such, we all have varying taste of games. So what happens is when one of us wants to have a game night, the people that we invite will depend on which game that we want to play. Say there's a 4-player Euro game that we've been looking to try, and I know that 1 or 2 other people are interested in that particular game and they like Euros. I may reach out to them first to see if they're interested in playing. And if they are, then there's our game group. And if they can't, then I'll ask another until we have the max number that can play. Again, if we have, let's say, a 5-player game that people want to play, that's an Ameritrash game, and I know several Ameritrash players have been dying to play it, well then I'll reach out to them first and see if they want to play. The great thing is we're all such good friends that nobody gets upset if maybe they don't get invited to a particular event, because maybe somebody is not into Euros or Ameritrash, and thus they would understand that maybe that's why they didn't get invited to this event. But what that does is that keeps the group very tight for the particular game that we want to play. And then let's say we have a 4-player game we're shooting for, we'll have several 4-game players lined up that night. Or if we have a 5-player game, we'll have several 5-player games. We have had to split the groups before, and that is not the best way to do it, because what happens, you end up being split the entire night. As in, when one group finishes a game, they'll immediately start another and not wait on the other game to finish. And so you don't get to socialize as well as what we'd like to. So there, that's how we handle it. We'll have 4-player game nights, 5-player game nights, and then, well, if we get some extra people show up, then we can take care of them too.
I thought I would close with a comment from Bargarest that I think sums up some good thoughts about this topic. The best attempt at solving these issues is honest communication. Games are meant to be social and fun, so talk to one another and express concerns about issues like this before they crop up. Stay informed and be willing to make compromises so everyone gets to play what they enjoy. And I like, as he also added in here, I thought, some good perspective by saying, even with this, sometimes people just can't play certain games together because what they seek out of a game for their enjoyment is so vastly different than what others are looking for. And that's important to note as well. I'm saying here, how do we break into manageable groups and make sure everyone feels included? But the reality is there are going to be certain people you don't want to game with, and that's okay. You don't have to game with everybody just because they're also a gamer. But I think this element of open communication and being clear, these are the kinds of games I like, these are the kind of games I don't like. The reason I don't want to play in this particular group is because I don't want to be at this table for 3 hours, and it looks like with this number of players, it's going to run a little longer. So I think I'm going to go play a shorter games. Anyone else want to join me for that? I think that kind of just honesty, as difficult and awkward as it may be at times, in the long run, goes a long way to ensuring that everyone at the gaming group is going to have a better time and better future experiences. I want to thank everyone for writing in their comments and thoughts, and also for the great video responses we received as well. Thanks for all that, and I hope you'll join us again in our next Table Talk episode. But until then, thanks for watching.